Education is elevation. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. I know it's been a minute since y'all seen me on live, a couple of days. I've been traveling a lot. Shout out to everybody in St. Louis. Shout out to everybody in Atlanta. That's why I've been these last couple of days. Actually, speaking of Atlanta, today, the guest that I have, Dr. Everton Blair, he is somebody that's also in Atlanta. And y'all know here on the platform, I love to frame things in its implication towards education as well as politics, because sometimes a lot of us ignore the intersections between politics and education, and we believe people just political knowledge just fall in people's lap and like we ain't got to educate them on it, man. With that being said, though, welcome, Mr. Everton, Dr. Everton. Jumping right into it, man. Why should we pay attention to the race that you got going on in Georgia, and tell us as well about the district you're running in?
Yeah, I appreciate you, Consciously, for offering your platform to just engage on the issues. I'm Everton Blair, but everybody that's known me in this community where I've been born and raised calls me EJ, so feel free to do that too. But I'm running in Georgia's 13th congressional district, which is all of the suburbs south and east of the city of Atlanta where Black folks live. And this race is so important because after redistricting, we got a new member of Congress who's not doing the job. And we just deserve a real fighter who can take the issues from the streets to Washington and also deliver. We've been missing out in this community for decades, in part because we're often neglected, overlooked, and everybody talks about Atlanta, not realizing that most folks don't actually live in Atlanta. When they say that they're from the area, they live in these communities, right? Stockbridge, Stone Mountain, Snellville, Conyers, Covington, Jonesboro. This district has so many diverse communities spanning 6 counties in the metro region, and we don't have a voice. We don't have a seat at the table because our member is completely absent, and we just need somebody who can really do this job.
When you say absent, are you using that term metaphorically, or are you using that term literally? The reason I got into this race that caught my attention was who your opponent was and all the things behind that. Can you just educate the audience a little bit more on the uniqueness of your race, especially when you say the person that you're running against has been absent?
Yes, this is the most competitive Democratic primary in the country. And it is because so many folks have seen the infirmities and the ineptitude of our current member of Congress, who has been in elected office for over 50 years, is in his 80s, is not in the best health anymore, but just refuses to retire. And the opportunity that we have is just in our own power. We just got to replace him at the ballot box, because if he will not do the job, he's not voted in the past 7 elections. He has never lived in the district. He's not spoken on the House floor once this legislative session. So he's not doing the normal duties that a member of Congress, the basic duties, are required to do. But he also doesn't take any meetings. He doesn't show up in community. And when you both don't live in the district and refuse to show up in your community, like that's a huge missing opportunity for folks to engage with you on the issues, for your office to be accessible. And it's a new district, right? So there's also a lot of people that don't really know him. So all he's campaigning on is name ID from 30 and 40 years ago and perceived loyalties about putting out yard signs and not really doing the work to earn people's continued support. And people don't know that. So a large part of the issue in this primary is just communicating like, this is a new district. We're not represented by Lucy McBath or Hank Johnson anymore. We're represented by this guy. You've never seen him. You will never see him. But here's an opportunity to send somebody younger, fresher, more perspective, and an earned and proven leader who's going to work with you and actually accomplish some things for our community.
Okay. Something that I'm intrigued by in the race that you're in is that it forces people to go further in their analysis, especially when it comes to having Black leadership, especially when it comes to having a Democrat in office. Given that your opponent is a Black man that is also, a Democrat, what do you think can be learned in terms of how we can give analysis on how to compare it to Black leaders or how to compare it to Democrats? I feel like right now, we had a moment where sometimes identity politics can be the thing that, paralyzes the analysis, or it can be the thing that takes it on and make it go further. What do you think on this?
They say all skin folk and kinfolk, and I think that that's a part of what we're dealing with right now. And it's not enough, even to put a finer point on it, it's not enough to show up and vote in November anymore, right? Gerrymandering in red states and blue states means that you don't even really have a competitive election in the general elections anymore. In fact, your voice, if you want your voice to be heard, the only election that matters increasingly across this country is in the primaries. And that's when within your party, you choose which Democrat you want to represent you. And a part of the challenge is Democrats often don't have to fight very hard to earn the support in a primary because people just check the incumbent and move on. It's also harder to fundraise because the big cash funnels into races typically in September and October. But we have to communicate to folks and message to folks that, it's a new district. We have better alternatives. Like, we can have a better representative in this district.
Let's sit right here real fast. Let's sit right here. Let's sit right here. This part right here real fast. So the person you're running against has been in office for over 20 years. And we 50. Know for you run for 50. Man, 50. Let me, I was just, know what I'm saying? 50. Let me update my notes. For 50 years. So how does that impact how money impacts this current race? Because in my mind, there might be a financial advantage that he has from being in office for a lifetime, and you have not been in office for a lifetime. So can you just speak towards the money? And the reason why before you answer this, the reason why I'm asking him all this is that a lot of us in the audience of politics, we're very critical for how people take money. How they take PAC money from big tech, 8-pack, big oil, all that. But a lot of us don't really think about how money really fuels these campaigns and how you having a lot of money or having little money can impact how you know what I'm saying, get on that ballot or how you perform on that ballot. Can you just give us a little bit of description about like the difference?
Yeah. So I'm answers. We can go deep on this one because it's important. but David Scott, the incumbent, has been the most corporate PAC funded Democratic member of Congress for a long time by percentage. He raises very little money from individuals, very little money from hardworking folks in the community. Actually, APAC is the only group that has been bundling individual contributions for him this cycle, and they've even stopped doing that because even the folks that are on his side realize that they're gonna have to find another champion. So the special interests are propping up a different candidate in this race, who has also taken money from corporations in the past, and even before getting in the seat, it's already proven that they will, she'll allow corporations to prop her campaign up and won't disavow it and won't speak to the negative impact that these big money, dark IEs, big spending has on confusing the electorate, propping people up who seem like they're fighting for you. But at the end of the day, if you're able to take money or not disavow yourself from that dark money, what are you going to do when you're in the seat to actually do something for the people? And that's why, I've pledged not to take a dime from a corporate PAC. In office, I won't take a dime from a corporate PAC. And I've also led in fundraising throughout this entire cycle without doing so, and even out fundraised the incumbent who, despite, to your point, all the advantages that come with being in the system and having the connections to the people and the folks in positions to give you big checks, we've been able to out fundraise him with people on the ground, just folks that know me and trust my work. And that's been the people power message that we're delivering to folks. We can actually just achieve things the right way. And I wouldn't want to win the wrong way.
Yeah, man. My motto is research over me search. So I've been doing a little peeping through, what people are saying in these social media streets specifically. And I see that a lot of the supporters of David Scott argue that his seniority going to deliver a bunch of resources for the district. And you talking about how his tenure illustrates a particular pattern about how these old Democrats who refuse to leave the office. Can you just explain to me what specifically has the district lost by keeping the same representative over the last 2 decades, especially talking about delivery of resources to the district?
He's never been a strong advocate on the impacts within the community, right? This district has Clayton County in it. And Clayton County, if you know the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta, the busiest airport in the world, sits in Clayton County. But the city of Atlanta has annexed it, and none of the revenue proceeds, none of the economic development, none of the vitality that engine of the airport could have brought to Clayton County over the past 2 decades, where he has served as the current congressman in this district, has come to the residents and the small business owners and the Black families in Clayton County. On top of that, we've got data centers popping up all throughout the suburbs of this community. We've got biolab, chemical fires. We've got environmental regulations that need to be enforced, and you just need a member of your community who's seeing those things, feeling those things, driving the same highways and streets, talking about suburban infrastructure, and honestly, the decline that is happening when people can't afford to, get one job and pay the bills. If they got a good job, they're likely driving into Atlanta every day and congesting up our streets and our highways. And then there's that just vicious cycle of, it's not in your backyard, it's not in your community. Nobody's fighting for the big dollars, those federal dollars, to come into town so that you can benefit right in your surroundings. And that's what we're missing, is just a member of Congress who is doing the job as designed, and really, helping us have advocacy. And the biggest parts of it are, there's chronic parts of the district that he has represented for a long time that have just not had their fair share, and that's what I'll be fighting for.
Man, so before I go any further, there may be a big part of the audience that don't know necessarily what the hell Congress does specifically, or what the roles of Congress, what I'm saying, like what can we look forward to? Can you just educate the people that might not be as knowledgeable of what Congress roles are? Can you just, kind of tell them what are the duties and roles that you're running for, that you think that you better than Buddy at?
Yeah, it's one of two branches in our legislature that passes laws and passes our budget. And your budget is your priorities. Your budget reflects your values. And I believe, especially as the former chairman of the largest school system in Georgia, having passed a $2.5 billion budget, servicing our teachers and our students in the community in Gwinnett County, I believe that we need to be looking carefully at our budget and our tax code. And as a member who is seeing rising costs across the community, who is seeing people pay more to get less, and the reality that a lot of the jobs that are coming into our community are not sustainable for us to have, middle class living experiences, cash that we can actually pass down to the next generation and be able to afford a home. We need a member of Congress who can fight to expand access. And that's expanding the middle class, that's taxing billionaires, that's taxing big business, and reinvesting that money into childcare, into healthcare, into small businesses, and into working families' pockets, so that our refund checks are bigger, so there's more economic stimulus in our communities, and so that Black and brown folks have the opportunity to create wealth that they can pass down. That's what your member of Congress could be doing if they were speaking on the floor, if they were advocating for your issues, if they were passing legislation that made your lives easier. But David Scott has given up on all of his duties, and that's why he has to be replaced, because it's just time.
Say, hey, I ain't gonna lie to y'all. I seen a picture and a video of bro being escorted in a wheelchair by his staff to sign up to be to be on the ballot. I seen that, and it was like, damn, what's going on here? You mentioned being a part of the biggest school board, or being a part of Georgia's most diverse school district. What specific accomplishments from that role prepare you to be in Congress? Like, how would you apply the experience of being the Gwinnett County School Board chair to being able to do federal education policy?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm a big proponent of education. I'm glad we're on the show talking about it. I know what good education policy should be expanded across the country, and especially in our community. And I also know what it means to actually pass a budget and see the direct impact of a line item that you fought for and got approved, and how it impacts somebody's life, how it impacts a child's life. We raised teacher pay in Gwinnett and kept our salaries competitive where they weren't. A lot of our folks began moving to DeKalb and moving to Atlanta and Fulton because they were paying $2,000 to $4,000 more per position. And it was heavy advocacy on my part to make sure that we were retaining our good people and keeping our competitive salaries. During the pandemic, I chaired the entire board, Democrats and Republicans, and I led on making sure that our students were safe, had access to meals, had access to laptops and hotspots, and that our COVID protocols were aligned with science. And that we're safe, and we kept our teachers safe while also returning our students back to school as soon as it was safe to do so. So all of the leadership lessons that were learned in how to deal with the political chaos of a really cantankerous environment, right? I led and experienced firsthand. So I'm battle tested. I'm ready on day one. I've been fighting for our communities long before I was on the school board and long after, and I will continue to do so. But it's just time for the next generation to lead. But unfortunately, too many of us find ourselves in this, like, You got to wait your turn, right? You got to pay your dues. It's seniority over everything, even when that seniority is no longer serving us. So that's what we're fighting against in this race.
Even win. So this keep it in the vein of education.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Congress plays a big role on whether we're able to get Mango Mussolini, dementia Donald Trump out of office. Can you educate the audience and myself on, if you're able to win this position, what roles does Congress play in getting the impeachment for Donald Trump, and then after the impeachment, the further removal? Because all of us have learned in the last time Trump was in office that impeachment does not mean removal. But can you just educate us on, you feel me, how that works?
This is the biggest place where Congress is sitting on its hands right now. And even in the minority, there are some tactics that we could be doing to more effectively push the Republicans to do better, jamming up the gears of this administration and holding the line. When we hold the line, we often cave as Democrats, or we don't actually fight for and then deliver on the things that we say are important to us. And so some of what we need to do is just follow through and be brave and be bold enough, right? We've got to push leadership. We've got to push Hakeem Jeffries to stand on business and do the things that he espouses. I mean, we cannot be beholden to these special interests, to AIPAC, to the big corporate interests that are silencing even the Democrats in our party. And so I'm the candidate that is like the most brave and bold to call that stuff out. And that's a big part of where Congress has honestly abdicated its duty, because there are folks that are paid to be quiet. and their silence is bought and sold. But Congress has a huge oversight authority where it can not only, to your point, do impeachment proceedings, it can also do subpoenas and oversight, bring these people in and grill them on the practices that they're doing, and have them, under oath, declare that they're going to do something different, push them to be better. And that's, I mean, in addition to the impeachment of Donald Trump, and the prosecution that should have happened in Biden's administration with Merrick Garland being the attorney general, and that we just chose not to do because we were concerned about how that would bode for the election. And look how that turned out anyway. It's like Democrats just need to start using our power when we have it. And that way people will find more trust and faith in us as their leaders. But right now we just got a bunch of folks who, let the president do whatever. And then when we're in the majority, it's important for us to elect members who will be brave enough to go there and actually impeach these fools. When Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi were in their positions, they should have been impeached. We should have been signing on articles of impeachment well beyond it got to the point when even Trump wanted to fire them. So, I mean, that's what's crazy to me.
The tension in this, though. I think the tension in all this is, the more a lot of us learn about policy, a lot of us learn more about the ins and outs of just the checks and balances, we start to feel like, man, maybe the way that we're taught the system has authority, maybe it doesn't have that authority. Because to your point, something should have been done last year, 2 years ago. So for the people that feel, alienated, or that's experiencing, apathy in terms of this shit don't matter, what can you say to them specifically? You feel me? You need them to go to the poll to be able to vote you in. A lot of them feel like this shit don't matter. You just said, I'm saying, on Conscious Leads, essay, podcast, Substack, I don't know what we call them these days, that some shit should have happened. It hasn't happened yet. What's the point? What's your response?
I said things definitely won't get better if we don't fight for it. And I'm the biggest proponent of yes and, right? Like, we need to vote and we need to be in the streets. We need to vote and we need to push our leaders to be better. We need to vote and we need to partner with small businesses and public entities and private partnerships in our community to make sure that the work that's happening beyond just Congress and beyond the government and the elected officials is happening in our community. And when we have the opportunity to do so with mutual aid or with, just community development work, that we're connecting resources to pain points and to need in our community, all of those things should work together. So I'm definitely not an either or type of person on that front. But I do think we need to have a new group of folks that we are supporting. And those folks have to take pledges. They have to stand on the business that they say when they campaign for the offices that they do. And then they should be removed if they don't do what they said they were going to do. I'm the first to say I've signed on to, I'm going to term limit myself voluntarily in this seat. Because I don't believe people should be in office for more than 20 years.
Hell yeah, that is bad. I think that one could argue that's undemocratic.
Yeah.
But speaking of this, I feel like right now we're going towards the direction of the party. I think that locally throughout the country. I know, especially in Georgia, but also on a national level, we have a lot of people talking about on what direction the party should go to. Should the party move further left to energize younger progressive voters, or stay moderate to compete for the swing suburbs, or what I call the mythical moderate voter? What do you land on this spectrum? How do you vote leading David Scott on major economic bills? And specifically, do you think we should be going further left, more progressive, or should we be fighting for the more moderate? Should we be going more middle?
The truth is we need way more than two parties. And a two-party system is never going to achieve, the both, like a coalition that's satisfied. But I'm very strong on progressive economic policy that fights for working families and working people. And we need bold leadership in that whole frame. The biggest difference between me and David Scott has been more conservative than he's ever needed to be as the representative for this seat. And it's just, it's crazy in part because the district is constitutionally drawn to be majority Black, right? Like this district was recreated because of the Supreme Court case that redrew districts in Alabama and Louisiana. It also forced Georgia to redraw this district. And in making it Blacker, they just strategically carved up all the Black people south and east of Atlanta into one district. That's why it spans 6 counties, and that's why there's so many different and diverse communities in it. But with all that, I mean, we just need somebody who is going to fight for the values and the issues that hardworking people don't have currently reflected in this. And that requires us to be brave in who we're supporting in these primaries, so that we're not looking at just the status quo, go with the flow, moderate Dems. We can have some bold leaders who are fighting harder and fighting further for us to have Medicare for all, right? For us to stand up to big corporations, for us to fight for a basic income that we can all live and survive by, and for us to take ourselves out of Israel's bidding into endless wars in the Middle East and fight for economies of scale in our community that expands the middle class. When you got David Scott there, who is funding DHS, right, funding ICE agents in our streets, he broke rank with Democrats to pass the DHS funding bill. He also does like other weird stuff, like he was one of 3 Black Democrats to vote to honor Charlie Kirk.
Hold on. We ain't gonna go past this. What has David Scott done specifically to ensure Black education, to just suppose this Charlie Kirk thing? Because this is what I've been finding to be very like, hold on now.
There was a resolution that the House passed after Charlie Kirk was murdered, and every Black Democrat did not sign on to it except 3, I believe, maybe 4, and David Scott was one of them. Hakeem Jeffries was too. Hakeem Jeffries signed on to it as well. And so it's just bizarre because there was no mandate to do that. It's not in line with our communities, right? Like people were feeling all type of ways, and it didn't make any sense. But he's also been out of step with the community, and in part because he's not really here. He's not really all there. And when I say it's time, that's me being polite.
So why do you think it's been such a tension for this generational turnover to happen within the Democratic Party? That's not just about age, but also about a different approach in governance. Like, why do you think it's been so hard for so many older Democrats that's been in office for 50, 30, 20 years to give up the seat?
Yeah, it's not natural for people who are in positions of power to do something that doesn't benefit them.
Can you
They would lose. They would have fewer of them. The interests that back their ability, their staying power, their ability to continue in power, right, would be minimized. They would be actively campaigning against themselves. That the system works for them as it's designed. And so there's no incentive for them to change it, because changing it would both work for working class people to get to these offices and to be more, and for our entire country to be more reflected, more representative in Congress. But there's no mandate for them to do that. And with the Citizens United court decision that allows for unlimited dark money spending, which has come in this race and has propped up, seemingly decent candidates on resume, and typically, and now they're going for candidates that it's really hard to tell that they're backed by these special and corporate interests, and that's their crafty work. They find the shiny face, they find the person that can be bought, and then on the other hand of that, they're just really, it's just a huge money rich system. So you got the other reality of like hardworking people who are doing it the right way that still have to find a way to fundraise $1 million to communicate to their constituents. And it really just comes down to the big money.
And the thing about the big money that makes me think of the implications of what the incumbent is doing is that the big beautiful bill was helped pass because a lot of Democrats, a few Democrats died in office.
Mm-hmm.
Them dying in office allow for Republicans to fill in those positions to make sure they got the big beautiful bill passed. I also think people that's listening and watching, when we talk about Donald Trump being able to stack the Supreme Court, Barack Obama had the opportunity to replace Ruth Gatorberg, Ruth RB, you know what I'm saying? This woman, goddamn, she didn't want to move. Yep. She died in office. Donald Trump was able to fill that position.
Yep.
I know a lot of us make jokes and we be funny talking about old people being in office and we having to prop positions from their hands, they cold hands. But a lot of us that's gonna be alive for the next, you know what I'm saying, they got more time ahead of us than behind us. We gotta really sit with the political, realities that this creates. Because if this man win, if David Scott win, he die in office.
Yep.
Who's gonna be impacted by that?
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, when I look at the ugly bill, only passed by 1 vote, and if we had just
like 4 or 5, I think I seen. Here's why Kevin made a report on it a few months ago. I think it was like 4 to 5 Democrats that died in office. Those positions were filled by Republicans, and that definitely helped pass the ugly, beautiful bill, ugly, whatever.
Yep, close. It was Sylvester Turner, Raul Grijalva, and Jerry Connolly. And if they had vacated their positions or resigned, right, or retired when the last term was over, before they had passed away, it would have given us the numbers to be able to fight that bill. It would have also created, there wouldn't have been a need for the shutdown, right? We had a whole shutdown in the fall that was the longest ever because we were fighting for the healthcare subsidies. And then we eventually caved. And then those healthcare subsidies gone away, right? So now we do this thing where we cause pain with the ostensible moral goal of achieving something, and then we don't even complete that mission. so we also, like, we're not thinking ahead, we're not thinking strategically and pragmatically, and then when we do try to fight, we don't even accomplish the purpose of the fight. So broad scheme, we need Democrats who are going to fight to make Democrats better. And that includes replacing some of the ones that are not fighting anymore for us. It also includes bringing leaders who are going to do the relational work of, endorsing other Democrats in other districts and helping other people who are aligned on this mission so that we can actually help get them elected. And I have a track record of doing that in community across Georgia just because I care. And I supported successors that replaced me on the school board. I supported people who helped me constitute a board majority. I supported state legislators in this state, as well as members of the United States Congress who are supportive privately of this campaign. And so there's a lot of goodwill that we have in just doing the hard work, but we just need new folks that are changing the face of the guard.
I got a random question. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. We do need more than 2 parties. My question, though, is that I would argue the 2-party system in our country is legislated. What role, if any, would Congress have in passing bills to make sure we're able to get more parties? Or do you feel like there would be a different mechanism for us to go about being able to get more than 2 parties? I think that this is a part of the conversation as well that I think could also, in my opinion, when we start talking about protecting democracy, defending democracy, it'd be a lot of things in that we don't allow to be negotiable or debatable. And I think the 2-party system is part of that. So what role, if any, does Congress have in that?
If we had a bunch of more parties, right, every piece of legislation would have to be caucused. So you would have, like, here's a good example, right? Like Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna are agreeing on a war powers resolution. And there are certain things that they're like, even like Rand Paul sometimes is like saying some things that sound progressive and on the side of where a lot of like folks, us on the left, are saying some of the same things. So there's some moments, even Marjorie Taylor Greene is starting to make a little bit of sense, even though I think that's all for, you know, her next gig that she wants to get some money off of. But if we had a lot, what'd you say?
Don't trust it, people. Don't trust it.
Oh yeah, I definitely don't trust that. But basically, if we had a lot more parties, we would be able to focus on the issues instead of the political factions and coalitions and the big money. We would be able to take issue by issue and build consensus with a lot more people caucusing around, you know, what our Medicare system for all could look like. And then it would dilute the influence of these corporate PACs and these big special interests, because there would be, you know, 7 or 8 different groups that would have completely different.
I'm asking you a solvency question though. I'm asking you a solvency question and think about it in terms of like the mechanism. We agree we need more than 2 parties. My question though is based off of what you know in the roles and duties of Congress. Would Congress have a role, if any, in passing policy to make sure we're able to get out of what some call a duopoly? Or do we need to sit around and think about more what it will look like in terms of what is the material thing that needs to happen for us to have more than Democrats and Republicans? So that's why I'm asking really, like, does Congress have a role in expanding this, or would this thing have to go through a different mechanism? That's what I'm really curious.
That's a good question. I don't know the true answer to it, because we do have more parties. The question that you're asking is like, why doesn't the Green Party have members of Congress, right? Or why doesn't the Working Families Party have current members of Congress that are independent from the Democratic Party? And I mean, we probably need to do some more research on exactly why, like what that would require. But I think the reality is folks are just pragmatic. And even those that are Democratic socialists, and even those that identify with the Working Families Party, like I do, like we realize that there's no way to get elected outside of the current binary. So it's how do we elect people who can push the Democratic Party to be better? And, you know, it's this, what you're talking about is like, how do we have some people that are willing to defect and start something new?
Definitely. And understanding that it has to, and understanding that the 2-party system is monopolized within policy, meaning there is no way for us to even actualize really political authority with the Green Party or the Working Families or any of the alternatives, because I would argue that there's a monopoly within legislation that always makes it where these groups can be commodified or assumed by the major parties, but they will never be a party. And in my mind, it's like, this is due with the policymaking system. And it's like, okay, does the policymaking system have a role in undoing this two-party system, or will it always lead to? I think it's more of a philosophical question. You know what I'm saying? But I think it's a part of what we have to start unpacking, because I know
I don't think there's anything on paper, but I think in practice what you're saying is true, and we're at the breaking point. I think we're right there where people are about to begin defecting from the 2-party system as it is. And well, you know, the question that I have is like, what happens to the special interests in that interim before we figure out the next system? But it's happening, and I'll be on the front lines for the fight.
I feel like in this interview we already answered it. The special interest continues to be consumed and commodified by corporate desires, meaning if your special interest can be folded into corporate profits, we can take it on. If it cannot, it will maintain, it will continue to be a special interest on the margins for you oppressed peoples or poor, or whatever you want to call y'all, to advocate for. And I think that's just, I thought that's something that I think that a lot of people are ready to move towards, but maybe we haven't figured out the vehicle to get us in that street. And I think that we got to do more intellectual labor, and in some instances emotional labor, and figuring out what that looks like. I think that, you know, because I feel like even thinking about like pragmatism, the concept to me of pragmatism is like, hey, the democracy and the material democracy, not the idealistic democracy, has cornered the market on pragmatism, that we only think what is practical based off what the system has said is practical. Even if you can actualize something the system sees as being unpragmatic, the system will say it's unpragmatic, but hey, is it practical?
Yeah.
It is practical, but the system says it is not. It to me, it's like a circumventing conversation that leads us into always saying, well, we gotta do what we have.
Yep.
And I think that is a part of the issue. I think that's a part of the issue. I feel like it's like, hey, duopoly. Well, duopoly mean listen, man. If the law says that the Sherman Act, and we understand monopolies are bad, how come you don't feel the same way when it comes to political parties? If you can acknowledge, you feel me, a monopoly is bad, and being able to crush competition is bad, how don't that apply to this?
Yeah, it's a curious point too, because we had more than two in the 18th century and the 19th century. You know, even up through the end of the 19th century, we had more than two parties. So there is a shifting and a settling that occurred, and I mean it definitely comes down to race, because even the switch of the parties in the 60s and 70s is because of race. Black people got the right to vote, enshrined into the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. And then
pause real fast. So I know you saw the dialogue around Amber Rose and Nick Cannon discussing this from an educational standpoint, Dr. Everton.
Did I see that? I don't think I saw that.
So Nick Cannon and Amber Rose driving around the car, having a conversation. They recording it. They're talking about Donald. They talking about being Donald Trumpers. They talking about being that, and talking about how Donald Trump used to be going to the hip hop parties and used to do all this and all that. And people didn't start hating on him until he started talking about politics. And Nick Cannon talked specifically about how the Democrats were the one that started the KKK. And the Democrats would have won.
Yes.
So my question is like, from an educational standpoint, because we can pop out shit and be petty, but we keep it in terms of professionalism and being educational, brother. What is your educational? I think you're getting into it right now, but I think it's always good to contextualize what you're talking about. So historically, when you say the parties switched, what do you mean by that?
Black folks used to be Republicans, and Democrats were the party of the KKK, but Democrats then passed the Civil and Voting Rights Act in the 60s, and then all of the parties, all of the people switched. And so it's really just a matter of coalitionally, nothing is permanent. And even when you look at the 250 plus years of the country, it's very clear that there have been shifts, evolutions, and the coalition changes depending on the moment. In fact, it kind of makes me think of the bag of goods we were sold when we thought that the election of President Obama led to a post-racial society that we, no longer had to worry about. And then immediately after, we get the most racist president in contemporary lifetime, right? So it's like we cannot be duped into thinking that the fight for racial justice is ever going to be solved or end. But I also am not, too naive to think that the coalition might not evolve or adapt once again. I don't see it being like a Democrat-Republican switch, but there's going to be an evolution, and there's going to be a breaking that occurs politically at some point, because this is not sustainable.
I think the uniqueness in me asking you this question, because I would argue that the Atlanta metro, Atlanta and the greater area of Atlanta, will probably have to take the reins up in ushering in us having alternatives to Democratic Party. That's what I think. I think that it'll be up to a Houston or an Atlanta or Birmingham. In my mind, a Southern Black hub that corporate Democrats and establishment Democrats have been able to commodify and buy up. It's gonna be up to a Black district that's ran by Black folks, that's electing Black people. In my mind, to push this broader thing that happens, you feel me, across the country. I had a panel this past weekend in Atlanta at the Elevate Hair Show. And I was with Deontay Kyle and Kendra Damone. Deontay said something that was important about micro politics and how everything, started in the micro. And I just think that, understanding American history, 9 times out of 10, Black folks in Birmingham and or Atlanta got to do some shit locally
Yep.
for Black folks nationwide to be able to experience something. And I would argue like the duopoly. I would defend that. I would defend the terminology of this being like, but the duopoly, I would argue, disenfranchises more Black people than it pushes forward. And I think where you at politically, where you at, like not only you individually, but where you at like geopolitically, your area. I think that's like I feel like that's why I'm asking. I'm not just being random. I'm thinking like, nah, I just came from around there. I know the political history and influence of Atlanta in the area, and this y'all roll.
We should have a brainstorming like workshop on this, because the tension that I see is we're not in the same jurisdiction anymore. Right, like the Montgomery bus boycotts could happen because folks were living in Montgomery and could collectively boycott one system in one place. When you have Black folks that no longer identify communally in the same space but are spread out, it also makes us easier to, control and take advantage of and use big money to manipulate the few people that we do have elected to represent us. So I think this is a bigger conversation about how we harness people power in spite of big money corporate interests that are, propping folks up that won't necessarily do community bidding. And the best version of this that I have in this campaign is my Black economic agenda, which, is on my site. It outlines a lot of the things that I will fight for. And I think that would be a good starting framework. Obviously, I welcome feedback and want it to be broadened and then also nuanced depending on different communities' needs. But that feels like a starting framework for, the evolution of or the defection from, the two-party structure or whatever system we're figuring out, where we can actually have an agenda that we are holding people, our elected officials accountable.
Please explain more this agenda. And while you explain it, I'm
gonna put it in the chat. I'm gonna make sure you have it too.
Put it in the chat. As a matter of fact, can you say the website we can find this? I'm gonna be putting together a Substack article after we're done with this that I have more of the things we talked about. So I can put that link from about your agenda within the article. Just say it right now for me.
Well, my website is evertonblair.com, just my name.com, and /Black economic agenda. And you'll see there, I've got a 9-point plan. It touches everything from tax reform to education to healthcare, but also I deal really heavily on transportation innovation and Black-owned businesses. And there's a lot that our members of Congress can be fighting for, but are just focused on other things. And I think that this is also an intergenerational conversation, right? When we think about we talk a lot about fighting the big corporations, but what does it actually mean? And what it actually means is like private hedge funds and private equity can't come in and buy all the homes in your community and turn them into rental properties. If you stand up to big corporations, you can create a pathway to the middle class that allows for people to actually own homes that were built and meant to be owned by single families. And that's the type of work that it takes. You got to stand up to BlackRock. And BlackRock's got a lot of big money in this political game because they're making a lot of money by keeping us as renters for our entire lives. And we know that the best way to the middle class is to, owning a home, building that equity over time, being able to pass down the equity from that wealth to your children so they can own a home. All of those GI bills and New Deal era political advancements that allowed for a lot of our white neighbors to access wealth and abundance, we were not beneficiaries of. And so there's a lot in my plan about reducing the barriers to home ownership, increasing the supply of available homes, and making sure that there's enforcement of fair policy and no discrimination. And that's where Donald Trump, with all his you can't say Black, anti-DEI executive orders, has taken the reins from the federal government to be pushing more bravely on what Black communities need. And the generation behind us, is struggling even more than we are. And I just see that as an issue that nobody's talking about.
Yeah. And I'm hoping people that's listening to this, listening, watching, whether you're doing it live, whether you're on YouTube, and people that's on Instagram right now, you can come back to the conversation on YouTube or a Substack, or if you're in the car and you want to check it out on the way to the workplace, go on, type in Education is Elevation on Spotify or type it in on Apple Podcasts, and this will come right up. You know what I'm saying? If you want to share it to some people, but I'm hoping people that's listening to this can connect the dots. When we're talking about this long-standing Scott that's been in office for hella long, we're also talking about the conflict of interest that corporations have with making sure certain politicians stay in office at the expense of the community. I hope that's become obvious when you're listening to Dr. Everton speaking this, is that there are, when you talk about these folks that's holding hostage positions, that's coming at the expense of their constituents, corporations are helping them do that.
Yeah.
Corporations are benefiting when you have people like David Scott in office. I want to make sure I say that explicitly, because the dots sometimes don't be connected that easy for some people. You know what I'm saying? So just making sure we understand the reason why it's not that a lot of people you find as being insufferable leftists, or you find them as being crazy anti-capitalist, crazy anti-imperialist. They just being a fake revolutionary. Acting like, listen. This man has been able to connect the dots between how our policymakers be in cahoots with the corporations that make it work people like us do things. So just I want to, you know what I'm saying? Is there any last things you would like to say on this specifically? And in the name of helping you with the campaign, I know that because you ain't taking corporate money, you need money. You feel me? And if you ain't taking the corporate money, that means you prioritize and having a campaign that's powered by the people. So for people that do have a couple of dollars or some cents to throw at you, is it the evertonblair.com that should go to, or do you have a, what is it, Blue Wave link or something like that?
I got an actual link, but it comes up on the website, evertonblair.com as well. You're right. This is a completely people-powered campaign. I'm the only candidate that's been only raising from people and is also not propped up by a big, special interest or corporate PAC, and have elected leadership experience in this district. The majority of my donors are Black folks that I know. And then I also have the benefit of having the most in-district support in this race. So it's really, when I say people powered, it's folks that I know and have grown up with my whole life. And we're doing the work to, compel people in our community. And that's the biggest opportunity for change. Just to touch on one other thing, though, about this big connecting the dots between the big businesses and what's going on in your community and how this connects. It's really interesting.
Feel free to respond to this question in your thing. I like to try to engage with the audience as well. Shout out to you, Natural View. They say thank you for sharing your insights and truth with us. Watching live from a small Trump, Colorado town. You're reaching us. I'm listening to you. Shout out to everybody in a small Trump town. But as you explain what you're explaining right now. Misfit Nation says corporations were generally in favor of DEI. It was literally a corporate initiative. What the fuck are you guys talking about? Two Black men are talking about politics. We've said nothing about DEI, and we've been asked about DEI. In your response, what do you think about things like this? I think it's indicative of the district and state that you in terms of like Georgia and how people view your presence. Take it away, boys, man.
I mean, diversity, equity, and inclusion were, I would say, buzzwords that corporations adopted because it was politically expedient for them to do so when they did. But if you look at who they hired and what advancements they made and how their companies changed, if at all, it was much more symbolic than structural. And even down to expanding leadership opportunities so that there were more Black people in the C-suite, or, creating more pathways for non-conventional folks to be embraced as employees in their industries. Not much changed. In fact, many of the people that were propped up in that were white women in a DEI role versus Black and brown folks that had not had previous access to working in or being beneficiaries of the work that any of those companies do. So now that DEI is a bad word, I mean, I've seen it take place, especially in higher institutions of learning. And so I think, that's the place where I see the gravest sort of travesty is even the very spaces where they should be able to study the issue are going to have fewer folks that are coming in with pathways to be able to, affirmative action and be in community with others and advance themselves and get a leg up to be able to continue that work. And it's also just racist. Right, it's Donald Trump just being racist. So it's not a shock, but we have to find clever ways to get around it while he's still in power, and then also, a plan for as soon as we can take over the majority, we can outlaw everything that he has rolled back, and that's a funding thing, and that's also a passing better laws piece. But I see craft in this kind of middle ground where if we can't use race, we can use zip code. We're racially segregated as it is, so let's find clever ways to go about this thing.
I think in I think Oklahoma and a few other states then outlawed even zip code. So it's like like I feel like the policy making system knows that our country is so segregated. So it outlawed in states. I think in Texas too, but it's like, hey, can no longer use zip code. So it's like, shit.
If we can't use zip code, let's use census tract. If we can't use census tract, let's use high school, right? Especially on the affirmative action, higher education part. We're so segregated as a society that we can be clever in ways to understand, like family income could be a metric that we would try to use to continue to do the work of uplifting those who need help the most. And I just think we just need more innovative people who have the workarounds and are doing the fighting work for communities that are not currently being represented. Definitely not by David Scott. And then in the absence of that type of leadership, you just got big businesses that are coming in with data centers and storage units and department complexes and Dollar Generals, and there's not a lot of uplift in our communities as a result of that. And that's where I see us needing to fight the hardest right now.
Definitely, man. In closing, when is your race? When is it over? When do we know? When, where, how?
Yep. The best way to support, to your point, we do need resources. If you could throw us a $20 donation, do so at evertonblair.com. You can also get involved. We're doing phone banking. We're doing outreach. We're doing a lot of work in the community to make sure people know about this very important primary election. The final date of vote is May 19th, but early vote starts April 27th at your early vote locations by county. But you can reach me on all social media at Everton Blair or at Everton Blair Jr. on Twitter, and would love to engage with everybody on these issues and enlist some more support as we do a very uphill battle. But we are committed to doing it the right way, and things are going really well.
All right. In closing, I do have a part of my audience that's young, that is high school, college age. To the young Black kids watching this right now, specifically that want to get in politics but has been feeling a little discouraged, what do you say to them specifically?
Be a part of whatever change we are missing and need to see. And I see myself as one example of that, but you should do it too. Everybody, all of us should be doing that exact thing, right? Don't wait your turn. Waiting your turn is what got us this. Just take up take up the mantle and do something yourself right now. If you got a good idea and you think something needs to change, don't wait for permission. Just do it with whatever capacity, free time, resources you have, and begin to reach out to other young people, or even there's so much support in this campaign, honestly, from seniors who see this challenge and this problem. Right. And so it's not a us versus them at all. There are people who believe and respect the value of youth leadership and know that this is when our coalition has the most energy and vibrancy, and we don't leave anybody behind, right? And things that are good policy for young people also benefit us, because we're not saddling our parents and grandparents with the economic realities that we can't achieve ourselves. And so it lifts all boats. It's not one size fits all. We're all going to do better when we all do better. And I think a large part of this is just opening the doors for people to be involved, feel like their voices are heard. And this campaign is one of many across the country that you can reach directly out to us and get engaged, follow our stuff, share our stuff, and do what you can, and just continue to try to make this country as good as it can be.
Definitely, man. I appreciate you, man, for coming on. I'll be sending you the Substack link after I get the article all typed up and things. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. I actually got 2 live streams today for y'all scheduled. I'll be going live with the homie Lavish here soon. We'll be getting a little bit more radical, but I feel like showing y'all the range and giving y'all different ways of being able to talk about the reality that you in from different registers and frameworks. You know what I'm saying? This one was more through a policy making framework. The conversation that we'll be having will be more through a grassroots movement activist framework. But I encourage you definitely to pull up on me, man. Shout out to everybody on Substack specifically. I'll be putting that song up on DSP soon and showing y'all a little ski taste of this new theme song I put together, man. Education is elevation. Out.